Okay, so we are live. This is just a short impromptu live video. Um, don't really have anything planned, but I thought just have a chat. There's so much going on in, just in the world right now, I guess, in general. And there's a lot going on, a lot of noise going on, in the media. It's fair to say I don't watch the news per se. But whether you watch the news or not, you become aware, if you will, people talking, people sending me emails, things like that, having general conversations with people. You become aware very quickly of what's going on, and just walking past and seeing headlines in the newspapers, you see what's going on. You hear what's going on, rather. But I guess, you know, to set maybe a topic on hand, I maybe wanted to discuss toxicity in families, because I feel like that seems to be something, that seems to be a bit of a theme that's going on, I guess. I guess with hearing about the latest Beckham drama, if you're privy to what's going on in that department, David Beckham, Victoria Beckham's son, has come out allegedly speaking about how toxic, to put it in summary, his parents have been, and how his growing up, hasn't been ideal, if you will, paraphrasing. And with that being said, it got me really thinking. Now, I want to kind of try and line this up to scripture, because, my channel is to discuss all things, related to the Most High Yah, and biblical things. And when it comes to the topic of toxicity and, family differences, we see this in the Old Testament. And you might ask, well, where do we see this? Well, we see this all throughout the Old Testament. Let's start with Abraham, for example, if you have to pull an example out of a hat. We see this with Abraham. Abraham, excuse me, was told by the Most High Yah to leave his family and to basically move on. And, for those of you that maybe read the extra biblical books, such as the book of Jasher, it's okay if you don't, eat the fish and spit out the bones. But I have read it, and I find the account in there to be very, very interesting, because it gives us a little bit more insight as into why Abraham had to leave the family that he did. And it talks about, his parents worshipping other idols. Okay, they were worshipping other idols. And his dad particularly was an idol worshipper. It tells us that he set up idols, and he would have them in their living space. He would worship them. And Abraham would be telling him that, this wasn't right, and that he wouldn't be worshipping them. And just to make a long story short, the father wouldn't listen. Okay, he insisted on worshipping these idols. And Abraham's brother was also an idol worshipper. So I find that interesting. So that gives us a bit more information. That gives us a backdrop, if you will, as into what was actually going on in Abraham's household that caused the Most High Yah to tell him to leave. Because Abraham, we know, was a righteous man. He truly walked with Yahuwah. And so sometimes when, we don't always come from families that are perfect, if you will. right? A lot of us have come from, maybe, if you will, toxic families, toxic backgrounds, toxic, you know, homes, if you will, where it was difficult to fit in. And I guess that was Abraham's situation. Abraham didn't fit in because he, from a young age, was set apart. He, from a young age, wanted to follow the things of Yah. He wanted to follow God. But his family were not on the same page. And how many of you out there have come from a family situation where you haven't been on the same page? Maybe it's a case of, you know, you might not get on with your mother, or you might not get on with your father, or maybe you weren't raised by your parents. Maybe you were raised by grandparents who were toxic, you know, or maybe you were raised by foster parents, adoptive parents, whatever it is that your family looked like, you know, whatever it looked like, they were your family, right? For all intents and purposes. You were growing up in that household, in under their care. And, you know, it's funny because Yahushua Messiah, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, he talks about a day where he says that, and, you know, if any of you have got the scripture there to hand, because I haven't got it on me right now, he talks about a time where the enemies will be that of our own household, which I've always found to be very interesting because, you know, in these times that we're living in, you know, it seems to be that a lot of families seem to be divided out there. You know, numerous people that I've been talking to, you know, falling out with their families, you know, believers even, you know, not being able to talk to their parents because maybe their parents are not believers. Or maybe is it their parents maybe are believers, but there's a clash somewhere along the line where they disagree with the direction that perhaps you've been going in. The direction that they're going in isn't the direction that you're going in, etc. So please drop your comments down below and let me know how it's been for you growing up. Like I said, this was a very short, brief live, if you will, a kind of testing to see different times, to see who's, you know, can come in on this live, you know, best times. Drop your comments down below. Maybe we can continue this live on another day, maybe during the weekend. Let me know. God bless you.